Catherine stood frozen in the center of Gabriel's office, a thick contract trembling between her fingers. The Oklahoma sunlight poured through the tall glass windows behind him, illuminating the man she never wanted to face again. The same man who once humiliated her at a school dance now stood before her with the power to either save or destroy everything her family had spent decades building. Her pulse hammered in her ears as Gabriel watched her quietly, his expression steady, his presence as commanding as the empire he ran. Catherine's breath hitched when he finally spoke, his voice soft but carrying the weight of truth. "I owe you more than an apology," he murmured. "I you my loyalty." The words struck her harder than the memories she'd tried to bury. Her hands shook. The contract felt heavier. Her parents' legacy hung by a single decision she never imagined she'd have to make. Marry the man who mocked her years ago, or watch her father's life's work collapse. Everything she was raised to protect, every prayer her mother ever whispered, every sacrifice her father ever made, stood on the edge of this choice. She held the pen. He waited. Her world stood still. It only takes one contract to change the direction of your entire life. Catherine never imagined she'd be forced into marriage with the very man who once wounded her pride, all for the sake of saving her family. What would you do if the only person able to help your parents was someone who once broke your confidence? She stands there with the pen in her hand. The papers are ready. Her father's legacy is seconds away from disappearing. But what happens when she realizes the man she thought she despised may not be the enemy anymore? Lord, bless every viewer listening to this story today. Strengthen them wherever they feel weak. Lift their hearts wherever life has pressed them down, and let your peace guide every decision they face. Protect their families, provide for their needs, and surround them with favor in every area of their lives. Amen. Welcome to Mr. Michael's Stories Hub, where America's greatest stories and life lessons meet creativity and heart. If you're new to the family, we're grateful to have you here. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Your support helps us bring more unforgettable stories your way. Oklahoma always carried a rhythm that Catherine understood deep in her bones. Long before she stepped into corporate boardrooms or stood inside towering glass buildings, her world was shaped by the neighborhood she grew up in, a place where every porch felt like family and every block echoed with history. Children played in yards, elders told stories that stretched back generations, and laughter was as common as sunlight breaking through a clouded sky. Her mother's gospel music flowed through the house each morning, warm and familiar, and the smell of cornbread often drifted out the windows on weekends. Neighbors waved from their yards, sharing community news, recipes, and joy without hesitation. Catherine carried that warmth in her spirit, a quiet strength that had always set her apart. But on this particular morning, the neighborhood felt strangely still, not silent, just tense, as if something unseen had shifted. Catherine stepped into the dining room and found her father sitting at the table in a posture she had never witnessed before, shoulders slumped, hands covering his face. A mug of untouched coffee sat in front of him. Her mother stood beside him, rubbing his back gently, whispering a prayer under her breath. Catherine's heart tightened. Her father was a man who believed in pushing through storms. A man who built their family's company from scratch. A company rooted in dedication, sweat, and sacrifice. Seeing him defeated felt unnatural. "Daddy," she whispered. He didn't look up. Her mother sighed deeply, eyes filled with worry. "Baby, sit down." The moment Catherine sat, her mother slid an envelope across the table. It wasn't just paper. It felt like a weight, a warning, something she wasn't prepared for. Catherine opened it slowly. Her eyes moved across the lines, her heartbeat picking up speed with every sentence. Their company, her father's pride and legacy, was being targeted. A failed contract had opened the door for competitors to swoop in. Their business was days away from losing everything. And then she saw the sentence that froze her breath. "Your last feasible solution is to merge with Gabriel's corporation." Her fingers tightened around the letter. Gabriel, a name she never wanted to hear again. He was the boy who humiliated her at a school dance years ago. The one who mocked her in front of half the school. The one who turned her teenage confidence into public embarrassment. Now he was a wealthy CEO, powerful, influential, capable of reshaping her family's fate with a single decision. Her mother sat beside her, voice low. "We didn't want you to see this today, but we can't hide it anymore." Her father finally lifted his head. His eyes were red, tired, defeated. "He's the only one willing to help us," he whispered. Catherine swallowed hard. Why him? Why now? Why would he even consider? Her father hesitated before sliding another document toward her. A contract. Already signed, already prepared. By Gabriel. The air felt heavy. Her throat tightened. Her mind wrestled between anger, disbelief, and something deeper. A fear she couldn't fully name. "Catherine," her father said quietly, "he has a condition." Her pulse kicked up. "What condition?" Her father looked away, unable to meet her eyes. "He wants marriage." The word hit like a blow. Her mother gasped softly, covering her mouth. Catherine felt heat rush to her face. Confusion, hurt, frustration, betrayal, all at once. Marriage? To him? After everything he did to me? Her voice cracked. Her mother reached for her hand, squeezing gently. "People can change, baby." But Catherine shook her head. Not him. He meant every word he said back then. Her father whispered, "We're out of time, Catherine." The room fell quiet. The whole world felt heavy. Her family's survival now rested on a man she once vowed to forget. Let me know in the comments. What would you do in Catherine's shoes? Catherine arrived at the towering headquarters with a steady breath and a heart beating far too loudly inside her chest. The building itself felt out of place compared to the world she came from. Sleek steel, spotless glass, and spotless floors. that looked like they had never met a single footprint unless polished immediately afterward. It felt cold, not just in temperature, but in spirit. This was not a place made for front porch conversations or laughter carried across backyards. This was a place where ambition lived in every corner. She walked through the lobby with her shoulders squared, refusing to let anyone see the storm within her. The receptionist directed her to the top floor, and Catherine stepped into the elevator. As it rose, the contrast between her community and this corporate realm grew sharper in her mind. At home, warmth flowed freely. Neighbors calling her name, her mother's gospel humming from the kitchen, her father discussing business with pride. Here, everything was polished, quiet, and designed to intimidate. She inhaled deeply as the elevator chimed. The doors slid open. Gabriel stood across the room with his back turned, staring out a massive window overlooking Oklahoma City. He was taller than she remembered, sharper around the jaw, more controlled in his movements. His suit fit perfectly, nearly sculpted to him, and the stillness he carried made him seem even more powerful. When he turned around, his eyes met hers instantly. Catherine's breath caught, not because he was attractive, though he undeniably was, but because he was familiar in the most unsettling way. The same face from her teenage years, now aged into maturity. The same person who once laughed at her expense, now held the ability to rescue or ruin everything her family had built. "Catherine," he said softly. The gentleness in his voice irritated her. She didn't want softness, not from him, not today. She stepped forward, keeping her expression firm. "You knew my family was in trouble?" "Yes," he answered without hesitation. And instead of helping, she continued, lifting the contract in her hand. "You sent this?" He didn't flinch. "It wasn't meant to hurt you." She raised an eyebrow. "A marriage contract doesn't hurt. It's the very definition of pressure." Gabriel walked closer, slow and deliberate. "It's strategic." "Strategic for who?" she snapped. "For both of us," he replied calmly. His confidence irritated her more. He stood like a man untouched by doubt, while her entire world had been spinning since sunrise. "How?" she demanded. "You gain control of your family's business, and the merger protects it from the takeover attempt. I get a leadership partner I can trust over competitors with questionable motives. The partnership benefits us both." Her jaw tightened. "Marriage is not a business move for me." "For me either," he replied quietly. She froze, staring at him. There it was, something different in his voice, not coldness, something closer to regret. Catherine shook her head. "Out of all the companies you could merge with, you chose mine? Out of all the women in Oklahoma, you chose me? Why?" Gabriel's gaze lowered for a moment, as if fighting for the right words. Finally, he spoke. "Because I owe you." Her breath hitched. "For humiliating me years ago?" "Yes," he whispered. "For everything I said back then. I was immature, trying to impress the wrong people. You didn't deserve it." His sincerity stunned her. Her teenage memories flickered. The dance, the laughter at her expense, the embarrassment she couldn't shake for months. Hearing him acknowledge it, after all these years, hit deeper than she expected. "I can't undo the past," he continued, "but I can give you something meaningful now. Stability, power, a partnership built on respect." Catherine frowned. "Respect? You didn't respect me back then." "I do now." She hated how convincing he sounded. She hated how calm he remained, while she felt pulled in several directions at once. Catherine hugged the contract against her chest, trying to regain control of the situation. "You expect me to trust you." "No," he admitted, "not right away. But I'm willing to earn it." Silence filled the room. Not awkward, just intense, heavy, emotionally charged. Her pulse thudded against her ribs. She was standing across from a man she once despised, but he was not behaving like the cruel boy she remembered. He wasn't taunting her. He wasn't dismissing her. He wasn't acting like the superior figure she expected. He looked remorseful, composed, intentional, and that confused her more than the contract itself. Catherine finally whispered, "I need time." His response was immediate. "Take as much as you need." But they both knew time was running out. The elevator behind her chimed again, echoing through the office. Catherine stepped back slowly, contract still pressed firmly in her hand. She didn't trust him. She didn't trust any of this. Yet she couldn't ignore the sincerity in his voice, or the truth. Her family had no other way out. She turned toward the elevator, the tension in the room thick enough to follow her out. Gabriel didn't move, didn't call her name, didn't push. He simply watched her leave, and that silent stare carried more weight than any word he could have spoken. The drive back home was quiet, the kind of quiet that pressed against Catherine's thoughts and left very little room to breathe. The moment she stepped inside the house, the familiar scent of sage candles and her mother's slow-cooked dinner wrapped around her, but even that comfort couldn't loosen the knot in her stomach. Her mother was at the kitchen counter peeling vegetables, humming lowly the way she always did when she sensed trouble but wasn't ready to speak it aloud. Her father sat at the table, with paperwork scattered in front of him, though he wasn't reading a single line. His mind was somewhere far beyond the ink on those pages. When Catherine walked in, both of them looked up at once, two sets of eyes carrying hope, fear, worry, and the need for reassurance. Her mother wiped her hands on a towel. "Baby, talk to us. How did it go?" Catherine set the contract on the table, and the room fell silent. Her father stared at the document, like it held the power to restore his strength or crush him even further. "He agreed to meet," she said finally, her voice steady, but low. "And he explained everything." Her mother moved closer. "And he wants marriage," Catherine murmured. Her father's shoulders sank even deeper. Her mother pressed a hand to her chest. Marriage is sacred. It's not something you enter out of convenience. Catherine sat down slowly. He claims it's not about convenience. He says it's a partnership. He says it benefits both sides. Her father whispered, "We don't want to force you into anything." But Catherine heard the helplessness beneath his words, a helplessness that broke her heart. Her father was a man who fought through hardship with fire in his voice and determination in his step. Seeing him so unsure felt like watching the strongest part of her world bend in the wind. Her mother sat down across from her, folding her hands. "Catherine, decisions made under pressure often reveal who we are, but they also reveal who others are. Did he treat you with respect?" Catherine hesitated. Her mother raised an eyebrow. "I'm not asking if he was perfect. I'm asking if he spoke to you like a grown woman with value." Catherine nodded slowly. "Yes, he apologized. It felt real." Her mother out a soft breath. "Sometimes God uses unlikely people to push us into our next chapter." Catherine half smiled. "Mama, you always find a way to turn my entire life into a sermon." Her mother chuckled. "And I won't stop." But the smile faded as her mother leaned forward. "Look inside your heart. Not just at what he did years ago, but at how he stands before you now. People change when life forces them to grow." Catherine looked down at her hands, feeling the weight of everything she carried: duty, family, resentment, old wounds, and the fear of choosing wrong. Her father reached across the table, placing a hand over hers. "You don't owe us marriage," he whispered, "but we're out of options. That's the truth." His honesty cut deep. He wasn't manipulating her. He wasn't pushing her. He was admitting defeat, something he had never done before. Catherine excused herself and stepped outside onto the porch. The Oklahoma air was cool, and the night sky stretched wide above her, dotted with stars that seemed too calm for the chaos inside her mind. She sat on the steps, pulling her knees close. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying distant sounds of cars, laughter from a neighbor's yard, and the familiar rhythm of a community that raised her. A world so different from Gabriel's polished offices. Her mind replayed everything. Her mother's wisdom, her father's quiet pain, Gabriel's unexpected sincerity, her teenage humiliation, her family's legacy on the brink. Could she really marry a man she once despised? Could she trust that he had changed? Could she protect her family without losing herself? She closed her eyes, inhaling the night deeply. The responsibility weighed heavily, but giving up was never an option she entertained, not when her family's future depended on her courage. As the porch light flickered softly behind her, one thought whispered through her mind more clearly than the rest. Tomorrow, she would have to give him an answer. Are you hooked? If yes, tap like. It tells YouTube you want more stories like this. The next morning arrived faster than Catherine expected. Sleep didn't offer peace, only more questions swirling around the decision she could no longer postpone. She spent the early hours sitting by her window, watching the sun rise over the neighborhood she'd always loved. The familiar sound of distant conversations and cars passing by felt grounding, but it didn't erase the truth waiting for her. Her father's voice from the night before echoed in her mind, a voice stripped of its usual confidence. Her mother's quiet faith lingered too, reminding her that life sometimes moved through seasons she didn't choose. And now everything rested on her next move. By late morning, Catherine grabbed her keys and walked out the door with resolve in her steps. It wasn't courage she felt. Not exactly. It was necessity. The drive to Gabriel's headquarters felt shorter than usual, her thoughts too loud to let time flow naturally. When she stepped into the elevator again, she saw herself reflected in the gold-toned doors, firm eyes, steady posture, calm determination. She wasn't going to Gabriel as someone desperate. She was going as a woman, making a choice. When the elevator opened, Gabriel stood by his desk, reviewing documents. He looked up the moment he sensed her presence. His posture straightened slightly, though his expression stayed neutral. "Catherine," he said softly. She didn't bother sitting. "We do talk." He nodded. "Of course." She drew a breath, grounding herself. "I'll do it." Gabriel blinked once, a small, controlled reaction, but enough to reveal he hadn't fully expected her to say yes. "You will?" he asked, voice low. "Yes," she replied, "but on my terms." A flicker of curiosity passed through his eyes. "Name them." Catherine lifted her chin. "First, I remain myself. I'm not entering your world to become a silent partner or an accessory for your image. I will be respected as an equal." "You have it," he answered immediately. "Second," Catherine continued, "I need a real leadership role in the merged company, not a symbolic position to make this look good on paper. You'll have equal decision-making power," he said again, without hesitation. She studied him carefully, searching for any sign of insincerity, but found none. "Third," she said quietly, "there must be respect between us. This marriage cannot repeat old wounds. I won't relive what you put me through as a teenager." Gabriel's expression softened. "You have my word." "And last," Catherine added, "my family keeps their dignity. No one treats them like they are receiving charity. They worked for everything they built. That will never be minimized." Gabriel nodded, his tone steady. "Your family stands on their own. This merger doesn't erase their history." Catherine exhaled slowly, the weight of the moment settling around them. The terms were spoken. The decision was real. Her future and her family's had shifted. Gabriel stepped closer, extending his hand. Catherine hesitated for a heartbeat. Touching him meant acknowledging the contract, not just on paper, but in her life. When she finally placed her hand in his, a warm current moved up her arm. His gaze steadied on hers, not demanding, just present. Their handshake lingered longer than expected, and Catherine felt something strange, subtle, and unexpected settling between them. Not affection, not trust, something easing. She pulled her hand back gently, and the moment broke. Gabriel cleared his throat. Preparations will begin immediately. What does that involve? She asked. Lawyers will draft final merger documentation. Meetings will be scheduled with both boards. Your father will attend. Your mother, too, if she prefers. He glanced at her carefully. You'll be part of every conversation. Catherine nodded. Good. Over the next several days, everything moved quickly. Legal teams filled conference rooms. Her father attended every meeting, sitting straighter now that hope had returned. Her mother prayed quietly before every departure, asking God for wisdom and protection. Catherine remained at the center of it all, poised and steady. Every document reviewed, every condition confirmed, every decision made with intention. She wasn't being swept into Gabriel's world. She was entering it on equal footing. The day of the signing ceremony approached, and although the weight of what lay ahead pressed on her, Catherine stayed focused. Her life was changing, but she was not surrendering herself. She was stepping forward with purpose. Everything was in motion. There was no turning back now. The morning of the signing arrived. With a weight Catherine felt deep in her chest. She stood in front of her bedroom mirror, smoothing her hands over the soft cream dress she had chosen for the ceremony. It wasn't a wedding gown, but it held a quiet elegance. Simple, clean, respectful. The kind of dress a woman wore when stepping into a life she didn't entirely choose, yet intended to walk through with dignity. Her mother stood behind her, gently adjusting the neckline the way she used to before church on Sundays. You look beautiful, she whispered. Catherine swallowed, her throat tight. Mama, I'm nervous. I know, her mother replied softly. But baby, courage doesn't mean your heart is steady. It means you move forward, even when it shakes. Catherine managed a small smile. Her mother had always been her anchor, offering strength wrapped in calm words and unwavering faith. Downstairs, her father waited. When Catherine entered the living room, he slowly rose from his chair. He didn't speak at first. He simply took her into his arms. His embrace was firm, emotional, and full of everything he couldn't quite express aloud. After a long moment, he pulled back and rested his hands on her shoulders. Thank you, he whispered hoarsely. You're saving us. No, Catherine murmured gently, touching his arm. We're saving each other. Her father nodded, his eyes glossy. No more words were needed. A short time later, they drove through quiet streets toward Gabriel's estate. Catherine stared out the window as familiar neighborhoods faded into wide, open spaces. The closer they got, the larger the homes became. Grand lawns, landscaped driveways, gated entrances. When Gabriel's property finally appeared, it stood out immediately. Modern architecture, bold lines, expansive glass, and a long driveway leading to a stunning centerpiece of a home. It looked nothing like the world she grew up in. Beautiful, but distant. Structured, but cold. It reminded her again just how different their lives had always been. As they stepped through the grand entrance, the atmosphere shifted. Soft lighting glowed across polished floors and carefully arranged decor. Everything felt meticulously placed, expensive, yet intentionally understated. Gabriel stood near a long wooden table where neatly stacked documents waited. He wasn't in a business suit today. Instead, he wore a charcoal jacket and a clean white shirt, the top button undone. His posture straightened the second he saw her, and for a moment, something changed in his expression. "You look incredible," he said quietly. Catherine blinked, caught off guard by the sincerity in his tone. "You look like a CEO." A small chuckle escaped him. Fair enough. Her parents stepped back, giving the two of them a little space. An officiant stood nearby, neutral, silent, prepared to oversee the legal aspect. The table was set. The documents were ready. It was time. Catherine moved closer, her fingers lightly brushing the edges of the papers. Her heart beat steadily, not because she doubted her decision, but because of the enormity of it. Marriage, a contract that would tie her life to a man who once embarrassed her, now offering her family a lifeline. Gabriel watched her with a calm, unreadable expression. "Are you ready?" She exhaled slowly. "As ready as I can be." He nodded once, respectful of the moment. Catherine lifted the pen. Her hand didn't shake. Not this time. She signed her name cleanly, firmly, with purpose. She wasn't stepping into this union blind. She was stepping into it with strength and intention. When she finished, she slid the papers toward Gabriel. He took the pen, his eyes lingering on her, before he wrote his signature. His movements were controlled, precise, but the subtle pause at the end revealed something unspoken, awareness, perhaps, of the magnitude of what they were entering. When the officiant confirmed the final signatures, a quiet shift filled the room. It was done. They were legally married. No crowds, no vows, no flowers, just paper and a decision that would alter both of their lives. Gabriel stepped closer, lowering his voice. "We're partners now. In everything." Catherine nodded slowly, absorbing the words. Partners. Their first moment as husband and wife wasn't dramatic. It wasn't filled with grandeur. It was a stillness, charged, uncertain, but undeniably real. A beginning neither of them fully understood, yet both had entered willingly. As her parents joined her side, Gabriel gestured politely. "Let me show you the rest of the house." The ceremony was complete, but the journey ahead was only just beginning. After the signing, Gabriel guided Catherine through the estate, giving her time to absorb her new environment. She walked beside him with careful steps, observing how each hallway seemed intentionally designed, every detail arranged with precision. The house was expansive, but instead of feeling airy, It felt unfamiliar, a place that required learning, adjusting, and patience. Gabriel paused at the start of a wide corridor. "You'll be free to use any part of the house," he said. "Nothing here is off limits to you." Catherine nodded, her gaze drifting across the polished floors and high ceilings. "It's different," she admitted. "Different how?" he asked gently. She folded her arms lightly. "My home is full of sound. My mom's music, neighbors talking, pots clattering in the kitchen, kids running around. Here, it's quiet, very quiet." Gabriel gave a faint smile. "I suppose I've gotten used to it." They continued walking until he stopped at a double-door room and pushed it open. Inside was a large modern lounge with rows of plush seats and a giant wall-sized screen. "This is the home theater," he said. Catherine stared for a moment. "You have a whole movie theater inside your house?" He nodded casually. "Yes," she raised an eyebrow. "Do you sell tickets, too?" Gabriel laughed, the sound warm and surprisingly unguarded. "No, but maybe I'll charge you popcorn." Catherine smirked. "You'd better not. I just saved your company, remember?" He gave her a look of playful surrender. Point taken. Their banter felt natural, unexpected even. For the first time since they reconnected, the space between them didn't feel heavy. It felt almost easy. They moved on, reaching another open area, decorated with minimalist furniture and clean lines. Catherine gently ran her fingers across a side table. "You don't use half of these rooms, do you?" she asked. "Probably not," Gabriel admitted. "I'm usually working. By the time I get home, I just want a quiet couch and sleep." Catherine chuckled softly. "So you don't actually enjoy all this space?" He shrugged. "It looks nice. That's not the same as living in it," she said. Gabriel tilted his head slightly, examining her expression. "Do you miss your home already?" "A little," she confessed. "But new chapters require new adjustments. I'll make it work." He nodded, appreciating the honesty. As they turned down the next hallway, he opened another door, revealing a cozy lounge area lined with bookshelves and soft lighting. "This is my reading room," he said. "It's one of the few places I actually spend time." Catherine stepped inside, scanning the shelves. "These are all business books," she teased. "Not even a romance novel in sight." "I don't read romance," he replied with a straight face. "Clearly," she said, "because this situation is the opposite of one." Gabriel cracked the slightest smile. "I work on that." The simple humor caused Catherine to laugh out loud, genuinely, freely, the kind of laugh she hadn't felt in days. Gabriel paused, watching her with a softened expression. "I've never seen you laugh like that," he said. "You've never given me a reason to before," she replied lightly. He nodded, the truth of her words landing between them without tension. In fact, there was something healing about it, a quiet acknowledgement of the past without bitterness. As they stepped out of the reading room, Catherine felt a shift. Not romantic, not emotional in the overwhelming sense. Just a shift, a sense that perhaps this arrangement didn't have to be cold. Perhaps it could be something steady, functional, maybe even warm with time. For now, the important part was that they could coexist without strain. That alone was progress. Gabriel walked her to the grand staircase. "If you need anything," he said gently, "you only have to ask." Catherine nodded, appreciating the sincerity. "Thank you." A small silence settled. Not uncomfortable, but noticeable. A space that invited something new to grow, even if neither of them said it aloud. For the first time since their reconnection, Catherine didn't feel overwhelmed. She felt grounded and, strangely, hopeful. If you're enjoying Catherine and Gabriel's journey, comment more. To keep these stories coming. Catherine woke earlier than usual, the soft morning light slipping through the unfamiliar curtains of the guest bedroom. The room felt too still compared to the warm noise of her parents' house. For a moment, she lay there quietly, reminding herself that this was real. She was now living under the same roof as Gabriel, not by romance, not by fairy tale, but by a decision made for the sake of her family. When she finally stepped out into the hallway, she expected silence. Instead, she heard a soft tapping sound coming from the kitchen. Curious, she walked closer and found Gabriel standing near the counter holding a carton of oat milk upside down, shaking it like he was trying to solve a puzzle. He glanced up when he heard her footsteps. "Morning," he said with a sheepish shrug. "This thing refuses to pour." Catherine stared for a second. The wealthy CEO who negotiated mergers in billion-dollar boardrooms, losing a battle to oat milk. "You have to shake it first," she explained. He blinked slowly. "Oh." She walked past him, took the carton, shook it gently, then poured it smoothly into his cup. Gabriel watched, mildly embarrassed. "Thank you," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. The scene was strangely intimate, not romantic, but human. It made the atmosphere between them softer than the day before. Catherine reached for a glass of water. "I didn't expect you to be awake this early." "I usually am," he said. "Work starts before the sun does." She nodded, remembering where the day was headed. Today would be her first time stepping into the merged company as his partner, legally, professionally, and publicly. "You ready for today?" she asked. Gabriel nodded once. "I am, but I want you to know something before we go in." She looked up. "You're walking into that boardroom as my equal," he said firmly. "If anyone challenges that, I'll make sure they understand it clearly." That statement stayed with her all the way to the office. When they arrived, whispers trailed behind them almost immediately. Some employees stared, unsure of how to react. Others simply watched with curiosity. Catherine held her chin high, refusing to let anyone read nervousness on her face. Gabriel walked beside her, matching her pace, not leading, not overshadowing her, just walking with her. Inside the boardroom, several executives were already seated. Gabriel opened the meeting with confident authority, then introduced her. "This is Catherine. She will be serving alongside me in all major decisions concerning the merged company." Some faces tightened. One man cleared his throat. "With all due respect, she doesn't have corporate experience." Catherine's spine straightened. The challenge was clear, and she wouldn't shrink away. "You're right," she said calmly. "I don't come from your world, but I've led teams, managed community projects, and built relationships that last. I understand people. I understand growth, and your numbers alone won't be enough without that." Silence followed. The man looked away first. Gabriel's eyes shifted toward her, not with surprise, but with pride. He stood firmly beside her, adding, "She is here because she has insight I don't. Together, we'll move this company forward." That moment shifted everything. Respect, not forced, not requested, earned. And Gabriel didn't overshadow her. He supported her. As the meeting continued, Catherine contributed observations the team hadn't considered. By the end, no one questioned her place at the table. Walking out of the office afterward, Gabriel glanced at her with a quiet, genuine expression. "You handled that perfectly," Catherine exhaled slowly. "They weren't subtle." "No," he agreed. "But that doesn't matter. You stood firm. They saw it." Their steps aligned as they walked down the hallway, the distance between them smaller than before. The dynamic had shifted, not dramatically, but enough to acknowledge respect was growing. A partnership was forming, and the contract that brought them together was beginning to shape something more than obligation. The days that followed began forming a new rhythm neither Catherine nor Gabriel expected. Their life was still unfamiliar, still adjusting, yet each morning and evening added another subtle change, small pieces that slowly stitched their worlds together. Catherine woke early each day, stepping into a kitchen that no longer felt as intimidating as it did the first morning. Gabriel was usually there already, sometimes reading reports, sometimes simply enjoying a quiet moment with his coffee. And every time she entered the room, he looked up, not out of obligation, but because he genuinely noticed her presence. Those glances were brief, but they softened something unspoken between them. During late afternoons after work at the merged company, Catherine began cooking meals from her upbringing, dishes seasoned with care, layered with flavor and tradition. Gabriel observed the process with curious fascination. "Is that enough seasoning?" he asked one evening, leaning over the counter. Catherine burst into laughter. "If you have to ask, the answer is no." His eyebrows lifted. "How much do you use?" She sprinkled more into the pot, enough to make the food actually taste alive. Gabriel shook his head. with a smile. "I've been eating bland food my whole life, haven't I?" "Absolutely," she said, pointing the spoon at him. Their evenings slowly turned into shared routines. She showed him songs from her favorite artists, rhythms filled with soul and energy. He listened closely, nodding to the beat, sometimes tapping the counter awkwardly in an attempt to follow along. "You're off beat," she teased one night. "I'm trying," he protested. "Trying isn't enough," she said, stepping closer and guiding his hand. "Feel it. Don't think it." He laughed, a real laugh, and allowed her to guide him through a slow groove. His movements were stiff, nowhere near smooth, but the effort was genuine. Catherine's laughter filled the room again, uncontrolled and warm. It was the first time she laughed like that around him. Not carefully, not politely, but wholeheartedly. And Gabriel felt it. Something inside him loosened, something long restrained. As days passed, their conversations deepened. They talked about work, childhood memories, dreams they never shared with others. Catherine told stories about her neighborhood, block parties, church gatherings, her mother's strength, her father's drive. Gabriel listened with real interest, asking questions she didn't expect from someone like him. "You grew up in a world full of community," he said one evening on the balcony. "That kind of closeness. I never had that." Catherine leaned against the railing, feeling the cool Oklahoma breeze against her skin. "Money doesn't guarantee connection," she replied. "No," he said quietly, "doesn't." The balcony looked out over the city, lights stretching far, yet the moment felt intimate. The night air held a stillness that made space for truths neither of them planned to share. It was during this quiet time that the first rumors hit the media. News outlets questioned their marriage. Some suggested she was only with him for money. Others claimed Gabriel made a reckless decision marrying outside industry circles. The comments were ugly, too ugly, filled with judgment, assumptions, and cruel speculation. When Catherine saw the articles, her stomach tightened. The words clawed at old insecurities she thought she had buried. She stepped outside onto the balcony that evening, needing air. Gabriel found her minutes later, the concern in his expression unmistakable. "You saw the reports," he said softly. Catherine nodded, arms folded. "It's ridiculous. They don't know me. They don't know my family. Yet they think they can talk about my motives." Gabriel stepped closer. "They talk because they don't understand strength unless it comes in a form they recognize. That doesn't make it any less frustrating." "No," he agreed, "but you're not facing it alone." She turned slightly, surprised by the firmness in his tone. "Catherine," he continued, "you walked into a role that demands resilience. People fear what they can't predict, but I know who you are, and none of this noise changes that." She looked at him for a long moment, absorbing the reassurance. His words weren't empty. They carried weight, the kind that anchored instead of suffocating. "Thank you," she whispered. Gabriel hesitated, then spoke with quiet vulnerability. "Back then, when we were younger, I said things I regret. I acted like someone I didn't even understand. I didn't hate you. I envied how confident you were, how connected you were to people. I felt out of place, and I took it out on you." Catherine's breath caught. She never expected such honesty. He looked away for a moment, jaw tightening. "I'm not proud of it. I'm telling you because you deserve the truth." The admission settled between them, raw, sincere, and unexpected. Catherine exhaled slowly, her chest loosening. "I didn't know you felt that way. I didn't know how to say it," he replied. "Not until now." The wind brushed gently across them, carrying away some of the heaviness of the past. Their eyes met, not as enemies, not as strangers bound by a contract, but as two people beginning to understand each other. A quiet shift moved between them, delicate, slow, but undeniable. Something was blooming in the space where hurt used to live, and neither of them stepped away from it. The investor event arrived sooner than Catherine expected. It was held in one of the company's largest presentation halls, polished floors, tall windows, and a layout designed to impress potential partners. Catherine walked in beside Gabriel, wearing a midnight blue dress that carried both elegance and authority. She wasn't here as someone's wife in the background. She was here as a leader. Whispers rippled through the room the moment she entered. Some admired her confidence. Others stared too long, trying to figure out how someone outside their usual circles managed to stand in a position of influence. Catherine ignored all of it. She had learned long ago that silence from others didn't diminish her value. It simply revealed their limits. During a presentation break, two investors approached Gabriel with polite smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Catherine moved aside to give them space, but she still heard one of them say, "Your marriage. Interesting timing." Many are wondering if it was a strategic play on her part. The other investor added, "People are questioning her intentions. She's new to this environment. Some feel she might slow the company down." Their words weren't whispered. They were meant to be heard. Catherine felt her jaw tighten. But before she could respond, Gabriel stepped forward with a calm authority that silenced the men instantly. "She didn't slow anything down," he said firmly. "She brought stability when it mattered most. And if anyone questions her intentions again, they can bring those concerns directly to me." The investors exchanged stiff expressions, nodded awkwardly, and walked away. Catherine exhaled slowly. She hadn't expected him to defend her so openly, not in a room full of people who judged her before shaking her hand. Gabriel turned to her. "You okay?" She nodded. "I just didn't think you'd say it like that." "You deserve respect," he replied, and they needed to hear it. The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. "Thank you," she said softly. Always, he answered. After the event concluded and the building emptied, they stayed behind for a few minutes, letting the noise fade. Gabriel loosened his tie slightly, and Catherine leaned against a nearby table, removing the pressure from her heels. That was a lot, she murmured. He nodded. Investors care about image more than anything. But today, you showed them something they can't measure. What's that? She asked. Strength. She looked away, feeling a warmth rise in her chest. I didn't feel strong when they were talking about bout. Strength isn't about avoiding criticism, Gabriel replied. It's how you stand after hearing it. Catherine lifted her eyes to his, seeing the earnestness behind his words. You defended me. You shouldn't have to defend yourself alone, he said quietly. Their conversation settled into a stillness, filled with emotions. Neither had the courage to label yet. Gabriel stepped a little closer. Not too much, just enough for her to feel the shift in the air between them. Catherine, he began, his voice steady but gentle. I meant what I said on the balcony. Back then, I didn't know how to handle what I felt. Her breath paused. What did you feel? His eyes held hers, intimidated, drawn to you, confused by it. I pushed you away because I didn't know how to process it. She blinked, surprised by the confession. Now, he said slowly, I'm not confused anymore. The honesty in his words stirred something inside her. Something warm, vulnerable, unexpected. She stepped closer without fully realizing it. Gabriel, she whispered, unsure of what she wanted to say next. He raised a hand slightly, hesitating, giving her space to pull back. She didn't. Instead, she lifted her face a little higher, meeting him halfway. Their breaths mingled, soft and steady. And then, with a gentle certainty neither of them questioned, his lips touched hers. The kiss wasn't rushed. It wasn't intense. It was tender, the kind of kiss that starts from quiet understanding rather than impulse. Her hand rested against his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. His hand moved to the side of her face, careful and respectful. There was no force, no pressure, just connection, a slow, warm connection that felt like the answer to a question that had been lingering between them for weeks. When they finally parted, their foreheads remained close. Catherine opened her eyes, breath shallow. That wasn't part of the contract, she whispered. Gabriel smiled slightly. No, that was real, and for the first time, neither of them stepped away from the truth forming between them. If you want a part 2 or more love stories like this, subscribe right now so you never miss one. The days after the investor event marked a noticeable shift in how Catherine moved through the company. The once curious stares from staff slowly changed into nods of recognition, then acknowledgement, and finally respect. Not because of her marriage, but because of the decisions she made, the clarity she brought to discussions, and the confidence she carried into every meeting. She no longer walked behind Gabriel. She walked beside him, and everyone saw it. During a morning strategy meeting, Catherine presented a restructured plan for a stalled project. Her approach was practical and bold, addressing overlooked details that senior executives hadn't even considered. One executive leaned forward afterward. "I hadn't thought of it that way." Another added, "This could actually improve the timeline." Even those who doubted her began taking notes whenever she spoke. Her influence was becoming undeniable, and it was earned, not handed to her. Gabriel watched her with quiet satisfaction. Not pride in ownership, but pride in partnership. This was no longer the shy woman signing a contract under pressure. This was a leader. At home, her parents watched the transformation with relief and gratitude. Through the merger, new opportunities opened for their business, improved resources, distribution support, and protection from future takeover attempts. Her father regained his posture, sounding like himself again, strong, sure, ready to keep building what he began decades ago. One evening, he hugged Catherine tightly outside the office building. "You didn't just save us. You elevated us." Those words rooted deeply in her heart. Meanwhile, the competitor responsible for targeting Catherine's family faced growing problems. Investigations revealed shady practices, manipulative contract strategies, and deceptive tactics used on smaller companies. Eventually, their misconduct became public knowledge. They were fined. Their leadership was pressured. Their reputation fractured. Catherine didn't celebrate their downfall, but she felt the weight lift off her shoulders. Justice had arrived on its own. At a board meeting, Gabriel announced the rivals' legal troubles with a composed tone. "We no longer need to worry about interference from them," he said, glancing at Catherine. "Their actions caught up with them." Catherine nodded, grateful yet humbled. She didn't need revenge. She simply needed space to rebuild. Now had that space. As life progressed, Gabriel took deliberate steps to integrate himself into Catherine's world. He attended her neighborhood's weekend gatherings, not as a CEO trying to impress anyone, but as a man wanting to understand her roots. He stood beside her father at small business meetings. He helped her mother carry trays during community cookouts. He listened to stories from neighbors who joked with him like he had always been part of the circle. And he didn't shrink away from Catherine's culture. He embraced it with genuine interest. At one gathering, Catherine watched Gabriel laugh with one of her cousins over a harmless joke about his formal mannerisms. She realized then just how far he had come. Not for show, not for appearance, but out of care. The change wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, steady, intentional. And through all of it, Catherine found herself seeing him differently. Not as the boy who once mocked her, not as the CEO who offered a contract, but as a man who showed up when it mattered. A man who walked beside her without hesitation. Their bond was no longer forced. It was forming naturally, built day by day in small moments that mattered. Catherine was rising. Her family was rising. And Gabriel was rising with them. Together, as the weeks moved forward, Catherine found herself balancing two distinct worlds: the corporate environment she had learned to navigate and the cultural heartbeat of her upbringing. At first, she feared one world would clash with the other. Instead, something unexpected happened. They began to blend, not perfectly, not suddenly, but naturally, in the way two people willing to grow could create harmony where differences once stood. During weekdays, Catherine moved confidently through conference rooms, presenting data, interpreting strategies, and holding firm in conversations with executives who once doubted her. But on evenings and weekends, she returned to her community, where laughter came easily, music carried long into the night, and neighbors had opinions strong enough to replace any news outlet. Her life became a steady rhythm, a boardroom in the morning, a backyard gathering in the evening, leadership in one world, connection in the other. Instead of feeling torn, Catherine realized both environments strengthened her. One sharpened her intellect, the other grounded her soul. And Gabriel began witnessing both sides up close. The first time Gabriel attended her neighborhood Saturday cookout, he arrived dressed far too formally, wearing polished shoes that clearly weren't ready for grass, folding chairs, and excited children running in every direction. Catherine couldn't help but laugh. "You look like you're about to negotiate a merger, not eat ribs." Gabriel loosened his collar slightly. "I wasn't sure of the dress code." "There is no dress code," she said, handing him a paper plate. "Just eat, relax, and try not to look like an undercover executive." He smiled at the gentle teasing, grateful for her guidance. Throughout the evening, neighbors asked him questions about his life, joked with him about his straight posture, and insisted he try dishes with names he struggled to pronounce. Gabriel didn't resist any of it. He joined conversations. He asked questions. He listened, and he smiled more than Catherine had ever seen. Watching him adapt, not out of obligation but out of genuine desire to belong, warmed her in a way she didn't expect. He wasn't just stepping into her world. He was embracing it. At the same time, Catherine found herself adjusting to the polished sphere Gabriel had lived in for years. She didn't change who she was. Her strength was too deeply rooted, but she learned how to move within his environment without feeling overshadowed. She attended formal dinners, understanding the flow of conversations led by high-profile investors. She studied reports with Gabriel, shaping decisions that affected the direction of their merged company. She learned the strategic dance of business networking. But she didn't lose her voice. At one dinner, when a senior executive commented, "Corporate culture can be overwhelming for some newcomers," Catherine smiled politely and replied, "Only when the culture mistakes hierarchy for brilliance." Gabriel nearly choked on his drink. After the dinner, as they got into the car, he looked at her with admiration. "You handled that perfectly." Catherine shrugged. "I told the truth, and you did it better than most people in that room," he replied. Both of them were changing, not into different people, but into better versions of themselves. Their home life reflected this new balance. Decisions weren't made separately. They consulted each other. If Catherine had a stressful day, Gabriel listened, not with empty comfort, but with real attention. If Gabriel struggled with pressure from the board, Catherine's words brought clarity and calm. They shared responsibilities, talked through concerns, and supported each other without the tension that defined their early days. The distance that once existed, emotional and physical, was shrinking. They cooked together in the evenings, sometimes laughing when Gabriel cut vegetables too slowly. They reviewed company reports side by side, Catherine pointing out details Gabriel sometimes overlooked. Their partnership was no longer just on paper. It was in the small moments, the conversations, the teamwork, the shared silence that no longer felt uncomfortable. They weren't simply coexisting. They building a life together. One quiet night, they sat on the porch of Catherine's childhood home, visiting her parents after dinner. The porch light created a warm glow around them as they listened to the familiar sounds of the neighborhood, children playing down the block, music humming from a nearby house, distant laughter floating through the air. "This is where I feel the most like myself," Catherine said, hugging her knees close as she gazed at the street. "I can see that," Gabriel replied, watching her more than the view. "It's beautiful." She looked at him, surprised by the softness in his tone. "You're really adjusting here." "I want to," he said simply. "Why?" He thought for a moment. "Because this world shaped you, and I want to understand everything that made you who you are." Catherine's breath eased. No one had ever said something like that to her, not with such sincerity. "What about your world?" she asked gently. "It's quieter," he said, "structured, sometimes too narrow. But sharing it with you makes it feel fuller." The words weren't dramatic. They weren't overly romantic. They were honest. A breakthrough. Catherine leaned slightly toward him. Gabriel didn't move away. He welcomed the closeness with a subtle shift of his posture. Their eyes met, and something settled between them. This wasn't contract partnership anymore. This was genuine companionship. A growing union. Steady, strong, real. Catherine felt it. Gabriel felt it. Neither tried to deny it. Their worlds were no longer separate. They were intertwining, naturally, beautifully, undeniably. The quiet growth between Catherine and Gabriel didn't erupt into love overnight. Instead, it unfolded in small, deliberate steps, steady shifts that turned ordinary moments into something meaningful. Their marriage, once rooted in necessity, was evolving into something deeper with each day. Intimacy between them didn't begin with dramatic gestures or sweeping declarations. It began in the stillness of everyday life. One late evening, after a long day filled with meetings and family errands, Catherine walked into the living room to find Gabriel sitting on the couch, his tie loosened, eyes tired, yet his posture relaxed when he saw her enter. "You're home later than usual," he said gently. "So are you," she replied. She sat beside him, not too close, but not distant either. He reached for a blanket draped on the arm of the couch and offered it to her without a word. Catherine accepted it with a faint smile. Moments passed in calm silence, but the energy between them wasn't empty. It was full, comfortable, warm, As she rested her head lightly against the back of the couch, Gabriel shifted just enough to angle himself toward her. He didn't touch her. Not yet. But the closeness was unmistakable. Later that night, as they prepared for bed in their separate rooms, Catherine paused at his doorway. Gabriel looked up. "Good night," she said softly. He responded with the same gentle tone. "Good night, Catherine." Those few words carried a tenderness. Neither of them tried to hide anymore. Love began forming. In the subtle ways they cared for one another. When Catherine's mother invited them over for Sunday dinner, Gabriel helped in the kitchen without being asked. He listened attentively to conversations, laughed at family jokes, and made her parents feel included in their shared journey rather than overshadowed. When Gabriel faced pressure from the board one stressful morning, Catherine brought him a cup of his preferred coffee and stood beside him during a critical presentation, offering quiet encouragement through her steady presence. One afternoon, as they worked together on a company proposal, Gabriel paused mid-sentence, his eyes drifting toward her. "You know," he said softly, "I didn't expect this to feel right." Catherine looked up. "This?" He nodded. "Working together. Being together." Her chest warmed at the honesty in his voice. "Neither did I," she admitted. Their smiles reflected more than shared amusement. They reflected shared realization. Something real was happening between them. Something neither could deny. As the weeks continued, their shared moments grew more intentional. Cooking together became a favorite routine. Catherine guided him gently as he chopped vegetables, laughing whenever he held the knife too cautiously. Gabriel teased her when she danced around the kitchen to her music, and even though he still couldn't follow the rhythm, he tried. Evenings on the porch became their quiet ritual. They would sit side by side, watching the Oklahoma sky fade into dusk, while discussing their day, their goals, and sometimes their fears. Gabriel opened up about the loneliness of his upbringing. Catherine shared memories of growing up, surrounded by community and love. One night, while they walked through her neighborhood after visiting her parents, a light breeze drifted across the streetlights. Catherine glanced at Gabriel, noticing the relaxed ease in his expression. "You fit in here more than you think," she murmured. "I'm trying," he replied. "You're doing better than trying," she corrected gently. Gabriel smiled, the kind of smile that carried gratitude and admiration. Their hands brushed, not intentionally, but naturally. Neither pulled away. The shift became undeniable. One Saturday morning, Catherine woke to the smell of breakfast. Curious, she followed the scent to the kitchen, where she found Gabriel standing over the stove, attempting to flip pancakes that were irregularly shaped. She blinked. "Are those pancakes supposed to be?" he said, lifting one carefully. It folded in the middle. Catherine burst out laughing. "What happened?" "I was trying to make breakfast before you came down," he admitted. "Why?" He hesitated, looking almost bashful. "Because I wanted to do something for you. Something that wasn't business or obligation. Just something kind." Catherine stepped closer, touched by the effort. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to," he said again, more softly. She reached for one of the pancakes. It tore in half. They both laughed. The moment was simple, imperfect, and entirely real. For the first time, Catherine looked at their marriage not as a contract, not as a merger, not as a solution, but as a relationship, one forming through shared effort, patience, and growing affection. Love wasn't sudden. It wasn't dramatic. It was steady, emerging through small acts of understanding. And standing in the kitchen that morning, watching a man who once mocked her flip another misshapen pancake with a hopeful expression, Catherine felt her heart shift in ways she never expected. This was no longer a marriage born from necessity. It was becoming something deeper, something intentional, something real. Months slipped by with a steady rhythm neither Catherine nor Gabriel had anticipated. What began as an agreement built on pressure and responsibility had quietly shifted into a life that felt balanced, steady, and genuinely warm. Their home, once unfamiliar to Catherine, now carried the subtle evidence of shared routines, shared laughter, and shared growth. By the time spring rolled into Oklahoma, their marriage had developed patterns that felt completely natural. Catherine found herself waking up not startled by the silence of the mansion, but comforted by it. Sometimes she would walk downstairs to find Gabriel already at the dining table, reviewing reports with a mug of coffee, her preferred creamer sitting beside his as if he placed it there intentionally every morning. He would glance up, offer a soft smile, and she would return it effortlessly. The tension that once wrapped around them had dissolved. Their partnership moved with the ease of two people who not only understood each other, but enjoyed understanding each other. Simple routines became their anchor. Evening meals together, sometimes takeout, sometimes Catherine's home cooking, sometimes Gabriel's attempts at new recipes that didn't always turn out pretty, but always made her laugh. Movie nights, where Catherine picked comedies or dramas from her world, and Gabriel introduced her to documentaries that sparked surprisingly deep conversations afterward. Shared rides to the office, quiet, steady, often filled with gentle jokes or reflections about the day ahead. Their marriage no longer felt like an arrangement constructed out of desperation. It felt chosen, steady, real. Catherine noticed the shift most clearly in the mornings, when she would find herself lingering at the kitchen counter just to talk to him a few minutes more, even when she had plenty to do. Gabriel noticed it whenever he adjusted his schedule to make room for a moment with her, even if he didn't say it out loud. The comfort between them was natural, effortless. Their unity strengthened the company too. The merged business was flourishing in ways no one predicted. Catherine's leadership style, practical, empathetic, intuitive, brought a fresh energy to operations. Her ability to translate community values into corporate strategy made the workplace feel more human, more grounded, and more resilient. Gabriel, on the other hand, refined long-term strategy, securing deals that positioned the company for national expansion. Together, their strengths complemented each other perfectly. During board meetings, executives now looked to both of them before making major decisions. Catherine observed how much smoother everything ran when she and Gabriel presented united leadership. He never overshadowed her. She never minimized him. They moved like a team, confident and synchronized. Their partnership was no longer questioned. It was respected. What surprised Catherine most wasn't the success of the business. It was the peace she felt. The hurt she once carried from Gabriel's past cruelty no longer held a place inside her. The confession he made on the balcony months earlier had lifted something heavy she didn't even realize she was still carrying. And every day since then, he showed, through action, through intention, through quiet commitment, that he had grown. Gabriel healed, too. He no longer carried the stiff defensiveness he once lived in. With Catherine, he found the freedom to laugh, to loosen his posture, to share parts of himself he had kept hidden. He began attending community events without discomfort, greeting neighbors by name and embracing the casual familiarity he once struggled with. They were no longer two people from different worlds, trying to force a partnership. They were two healed individuals, building something meaningful. Catherine's mother saw it first. One Sunday afternoon, after Catherine and Gabriel stayed for dinner longer than expected, her mother pulled her aside as Gabriel helped her father fix a loose handle on a kitchen cabinet. "You're glowing," her mother whispered. Catherine rolled her eyes slightly, but her smile betrayed her. "Mama, I know, baby. See it. I see him, too. That man loves you." The words settled in Catherine's chest like warmth spreading outward. Later that evening, when they returned home, Gabriel placed his hand on the small of her back as they walked through the door. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't meant to be grand. It was simply natural, a gesture of closeness, of connection, of a man who no longer held himself distant. Catherine looked at him with quiet appreciation, recognizing how far they had both come, from a painful past to a promising future neither of them expected. The evolution of their love wasn't explosive or rushed. It grew through steady actions, trust nurtured over months, shared victories, soft confessions, and the kind of partnership that made both of them better. They had become the best versions of themselves together. Their marriage had changed everything. And now, standing at the beginning of a new chapter in their lives, Catherine felt something she never imagined when she first walked into his office months ago. She felt chosen. She felt cherished. She felt loved. Their destiny was unfolding in ways neither of them could have predicted, but exactly as it was meant to. As the months continued to unfold with surprising peace and growing affection, Catherine and Gabriel found themselves slipping into a new rhythm, one marked by honesty, comfort, and an unspoken bond that grew stronger with each shared day. And then came the evening that shifted everything into perfect clarity. The sky over Oklahoma was painted with slow fading colors, deep oranges dissolving into gold, blending into the early strokes of night. Catherine stepped out onto the porch, letting the gentle air brush against her skin. The sounds of the neighborhood drifted softly, the distant hum of a passing car, the laughter of children playing a few houses down, someone's music floating faintly from an open window. It reminded her of everything she grew up with: connection, simplicity, warmth. Gabriel joined her quietly, his footsteps steady behind her. He took a seat beside her on the porch swing, the wooden frame rocking slightly as their combined weight settled in. No words at first, just the stillness of evening wrapping around them. Catherine released a slow breath, the kind that carried gratitude more than exhaustion. "It's beautiful tonight," she murmured. Gabriel nodded. "It is But his eyes weren't on the sky. They were on her. After a moment, he leaned back, letting the swing move gently. His voice was low when he finally spoke. If someone had told me a year ago that we'd end up here like this, I wouldn't have believed them. Catherine smiled softly. Neither would I. He chuckled under his breath. We started from something complicated, something heavy. And now? She asked, glancing at him. Gabriel took a slow breath, gathering words with care. Now, it feels like everything shifted into place, the way it was meant to. Catherine turned her gaze back to the sky, allowing his words to sink in. Their beginning had been difficult, embedded in fear, pressure, and unresolved wounds. But sitting here beside him now, none of that defined them anymore. They had walked through the discomfort. They had grown past the pain. They had chosen each other every day since, even when it wasn't said out loud. It's strange, Catherine whispered. I used to wonder if we'd ever be able to move past the way things started. But looking at us now, everything feels clear. Gabriel's expression softened. I'm thankful you gave this a chance. Gave me a chance. Her chest warmed at the sincerity in his tone. Their journey had not been smooth, but it had been honest. He shifted slightly, turning more fully toward her. The fading sunlight touched his features, revealing a depth of emotion he rarely let others see. I've been thinking about something, he said. What's that? Gabriel hesitated, not out of fear, but because he wanted to express it right. I used to believe life was only about planning, strategy, control. But meeting you again, marrying you, all of this felt like something beyond anything I could have planned. Catherine's brows lifted gently. You're saying it was destiny? He exhaled slowly. Yes, I really think so. It feels like I was supposed to face the mistakes I made, supposed to cross paths with you again, supposed to grow into someone worthy of standing beside you. His voice carried no ego, just truth. Catherine studied him for a long moment, touched by the honesty, the vulnerability, the shift from who he once was to the man sitting in front of her now. You've changed, she said softly. So have you, he replied. She nodded. Maybe that's what destiny really is. Not some big dramatic moment, but the way two people grow into the version of themselves they were always meant to be. Gabriel let her words settle, absorbing them with visible appreciation. Catherine leaned back slightly, her eyes following the last traces of sunlight sinking beyond the horizon. When this began, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if I could trust you. I didn't know if I could trust myself. Gabriel listened intently. But now, she continued, when I look at everything we've built, our home, the business, our families coming together, I feel something I didn't feel before. What's that? He asked quietly. Peace, she whispered. The single word carried weight. Forgiveness, understanding, closure, and love, steady and real. Gabriel's hand moved lightly, almost instinctively, brushing against hers on the swing. This time, Catherine didn't hesitate. She interlaced her fingers with his. Their hands rested between them, warm, grounded, symbolic. Together, they watched the last of the sunset fade into evening, neither rushing the moment nor needing any more words. Their journey had been unexpected, complicated, transformative. But here, on this porch, under an Oklahoma sky, they reached the clarity both of them had been waiting for. Their past no longer weighed them down. Their future no longer scared them. They were ready, ready for love without fear, ready for partnership without uncertainty, ready for a life shaped not by circumstance, but by choice. The choice they made now, together, felt destined. The evening breeze brushed gently across the porch as night settled over Oklahoma, and for the first time since their marriage began, Catherine and Gabriel felt no weight pressing between them. Their journey, full of twists neither expected, had brought them to this moment of complete clarity. Hand in hand, they sat quietly, letting the peace of the evening surround them. Then Gabriel shifted slightly toward her. The porch light cast a soft glow across his face, highlighting the sincerity in his expression as he looked at her with a mixture of affection, gratitude, and awe. He exhaled deeply, as though releasing the last piece of the past that no longer held power over him. "Catherine," he said, his voice low and steady, "I used to believe everything in my life relied on structure and timing, on deals and strategy. But meeting you again, marrying you, growing with you, taught me something else entirely." Catherine turned her gaze to him, her eyes curious, softened by the tender quiet of the moment. "What did it teach you?" she asked gently. Gabriel's lips curved into a subtle, heartfelt smile. "That love was the plan all along," he said, "when I didn't realize it." His words wrapped around her like warmth, sinking deep into the part of her heart that once questioned whether she could ever trust him. Now, she didn't just trust him. She felt seen, supported, and valued. What began as a contract had transformed into something they could both stand on with confidence. Catherine let out a soft breath that carried both amusement and truth. "You know," she said, tilting her head slightly, "for a man who once made my teenage years a nightmare, you turned out unexpectedly wonderful." Gabriel chuckled under his breath. "I'll take that." She nudged him playfully with her shoulder. "You're blessed." I said yes. The humor in her tone couldn't hide the emotion behind the words. She meant it, every bit of it. Their entire lives had shifted, because she made the hardest decision she had ever faced. And the right one? Gabriel squeezed her hand lightly. "I know, and I thank God you did." Catherine felt her chest bloom with quiet joy. Their fingers remained interlocked, resting comfortably between them. It wasn't the nervous or uncertain hold they once shared. It was confident, natural, rooted in everything they endured together. This was the gesture of two people who had walked through fire and rebuilt something beautiful out of ashes. A marriage no longer tied to survival, but strengthened by love, trust, and partnership. The last traces of color faded into the horizon, leaving the porch wrapped in warm twilight. Fireflies began flickering across the lawn, adding a soft shimmer to the quiet scene. Catherine leaned into Gabriel's shoulder, and he wrapped an arm around her, pulling her gently against him. They sat like that, watching the night settle peacefully over their world. The moment held no urgency, no unspoken worries, only calm. The kind of calm that comes after a long journey finally finds its destination. Catherine had grown from a woman forced into a terrifying decision, into a confident leader, a loving partner, and someone who reclaimed her family's legacy with dignity. Gabriel had evolved from the young man who once hid behind arrogance into a husband who loved openly, supported wholeheartedly, and healed from the person he used to be. They weren't perfect, but together they were everything they needed. Two transformed hearts, two healed souls, one future built on choice, not obligation. The rival corporation that once stood against them had fallen into accountability. Her family's business now thrived with stability and renewed purpose. Their marriage had blossomed into a bond stronger than anything either expected, and justice, quiet and complete, had served its role. Most importantly, Catherine and Gabriel found peace. Peace in each other. Peace in their choices. Peace in the life they were now building together. A life formed not from strategy, but from grace. Catherine lifted her head slightly and looked at Gabriel with a gentle smile. "You ready for whatever comes next?" He kissed the top of her forehead. "As long as it's with you." Their hands tightened together, steady and sure, as the screen fades in your viewer's imagination. A contract brought them together. Love made them stay, and their destiny, unexpected, undeniable, and beautifully earned, was now theirs to live. If you enjoyed this love story and want more powerful American storytelling filled with emotion, growth, and unforgettable characters, make sure you subscribe to Mr. Michael's Stories Hub. Your support means the world and helps us bring more amazing stories your way.